Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus. Welcome back to another Monday. Joining me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners. I have a very clever joke for you this time.
Uh-oh.
What goes in hard and dry, but comes out soft and wet?
What are you doing with these jokes?
And get your mind out of the gutter. It's actually a very innocent joke.
Is it?
It is.
I don't believe you. Most candies?
You're actually really close. It's gum.
That makes sense. It's like Tootsie Rolls. Are we talking like lollipops?
You know, when I thought of this, I was thinking of a bathing suit.
I guess you could go with that, yeah. For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And hopefully give you some food for that.
So, Voyse.
Yes.
We have another shout out to make.
We do. We have another Teachery. Welcome to the Tea Club, Cole Reynolds.
Welcome in. Love and appreciate you. Cole Reynolds, detective.
Well, Damus, I have a nice tea for you for this hot summer day. And seriously, it feels like summer even though it shouldn't.
That's very true.
This is a very fruity tea for you. It has a mix of green and black tea and has dried bits of mango, pineapple, raspberry, and strawberry to give it that fruity flavor.
It smells fantastic. Oh, yeah. That's summer in a cup.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
Bring the paradise to the cup. Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your fruitalicious tea, why don't we go ahead and delve into these stories? For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. For our first story, am I the a-hole for not forgiving my husband after what he has done? The story happened a few months ago, but I am emotionally sensitive, so I am still very sad and shocked. My husband and I have been married for over 2 years. My husband runs a business, so for the past few years, I have been staying at home taking care of our child. A few months ago, we discussed buying a house, and I overheard him talking on the phone with his father about putting the house under his father's name. I didn't say anything about it because I thought it was his own money, and he wanted to make his parents happy, so I reassured myself in that way. But I was truly devastated when I found out that he listened to his friend's advice to put the house under his parents' name and then transfer it to his name separately so that the property wouldn't be legally connected to me during our marriage. I was surprised how he could go along with that idea when we have been living together, raising children, and never had any conflicts. I couldn't keep my calm and caused a scene, and the house buying plan was postponed. After that, I cried a lot, and he apologized and took me shopping for things to make up for it. But until now, whenever I think about it, I feel indescribably sad. I can't forget it, and I can't forgive him. What should I do, everyone? Am I the a-hole?
Well, let me put some pineapple on top of this pizza.
Oh no.
Gross.
Very gross.
I want to make sure I have everything correct. They've been together for 2 years?
They say they've been married for over 2 years.
And they have multiple kids? Because I know she says we've been raising children.
It's very odd because at some points they say children and then they say child. So I don't know if it's one or more.
Okay. But I guess we'll get into why she feels the way she does. Because from my viewpoint, she sounds like she's been betrayed. Anyone who's been in a partnership long enough would feel that way as well. These don't sound like conversations they've had together. Although I would wonder why it is you haven't. You know, you're talking about getting a home together. When you are a couple and you're raising children together, those are decisions you make together. Unless this is something that they've talked about in the past, or if this is inheritance money that he really doesn't want her a part of. I don't know. There are reasons why you wouldn't put a partner on a document, especially when you're talking about something as big as a home or a car. There are reasons you can get into it, but those are very specific and to that person.
And generally, I imagine that you would have those talks before, not find out during.
Way before you make these decisions. Because then she finds out the reason why her husband even went down this route was because he was listening to his friends. That's a real easy way to start cracking the foundation of your relationship. Trust is hard to gain back once it's lost. I think, in my opinion, OP has every right to be upset. Now, be upset, but have those conversations with him. Because she says it, they are no longer going forward with the purchase of the home right this second.
Correct.
Get an understanding for each other and how you want to go forward with your life. Because it sounds like you're in the beginnings of it. You know, you have young children. You're about to buy your first home together. Start laying the expectations going forward so you don't have these problems anymore. So in my opinion, OP, you're not the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole for feeling the way that they do. In fact, many said that they see this as a big betrayal, the fact that he would try and keep it quiet, and the only way that you find out about this is because you happen to overhear some form of conversation, really speaks to some sort of underhanded feelings here. Now, let me go ahead and read to you a slight update from our OP. OP says, update, thank you for all of your advice and encouragement, both in comments and PMs. I've discussed with my husband regarding this, and we agreed to have a divorce after a mere 2 years of living with each other. I will seek legal advice from a solicitor soon. I feel like I cannot continue living with him anymore after his act of mistrust towards me.
Once that trust is gone, it's hard to get it back.
Now, I will bring up an interesting point from one Redditor that I actually came across. They questioned the reason why the husband wouldn't want to invest in a property with our OP, and actually questions our OP with their money management. The only reason why they bring this up, and I find it very curious even on my end, apparently in another thread, our OP put some replies to and purchasing a coat of arms and how much they spent. They said that they spent $40,000 to purchase a coat of arms. For me, spending that amount of money for a coat of arms is excessive. And if you're with someone and they didn't agree to it, I can understand why a partner would be hesitant to want to sign in Gladstone any kind of property with someone who would potentially frivolously spend money that the both of them didn't agree to, that such a large sum like this.
Well, see, that adds another layer to this whole thing, is she's financially irresponsible if that's something that she has done. We can't prove any of that. But if that's a part of this, do you blame someone not wanting to? It doesn't give him an excuse, though. I'm not saying that they, as a couple, shouldn't have had a conversation about, hey, going forward, because I think you mismanaged money, we may need to put different assets in my name or your name, especially if she's willing to spend the way she does.
If anything, the only thing that I really drive fault with the husband is the fact that he would not tell her directly what potential plans or conditions were when it comes to buying the house, if he feels like they're going in half and half with both of them going into this investment together.
Yeah, you definitely shouldn't make decisions just based off what your boys are telling you. Have the conversation with your wife. If one of you guys is a little loose with the money, you can go seek help and start working in those directions. But yeah, I guess when you get given that piece of information, it's not an excuse for not talking to each other, but you can definitely understand where someone might want to protect themselves.
And regardless, OP's still not the a-hole for feeling hurt. But I thought it was an interesting twist, because if it wasn't for that Redditor putting that in there and then having me truly delve into some of their other postings, I wouldn't have caught this. Now, another question that I have is, I've heard of people buying coat of arms, but are those scam companies? Is that a thing?
I mean, maybe.
I've always wondered about it. I wonder if some of our listeners would be able to actually clarify some of that with us.
I guess it's whatever you want to put your value into.
That's very true too. Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about moving out of the parents' home.
Detective Voice on it again.
Am I the a-hole for not moving out of my parents' home? I, 33 male, am a father of 4. I am a proud father, and I take pride in my children. I also take pride in taking care of my parents and valuing my mental health and chasing my dreams. I have been living with my parents since I was 18, on and off, and I moved in fully when I was 25. It has been hard for me to find a job, but I do help with groceries from the SNAP that I receive, and I cook my mother meals, and I also help drive to bring the groceries to the house when she is tired. The past few months, my parents have asked me to leave. They say that I am too old to be living here, which I agree, and say that it is time for me to depart, and say that they want their own space back. They have given me money to help me get on my feet, and I have tried to triple that money that they have given me by buying lottery tickets, which give me the chance to win hundreds more than what I've been given, possibly thousands. I can't leave because I have nowhere else to go. And I can't work right now because I am going through a mental breakdown, and my parents are stressing me with dates to move, but I can't leave because I don't have any money. I have 4 kids and they need me, and I refuse to be flipping patties or allow my children to see me homeless. They have asked me to contribute more, but I don't feel the need to, since it should be my home just as much as it is theirs. I am well into an adult, but I am still their son, and I would like to have a roof over my head. I will try to contribute more and ask my uncle or my grandfather for money to help them by paying rent, but I cannot leave. I am trying to focus on my mental health and get myself together right now. Am I the a-hole?
What a dastardly story this is. Where'd you dig this one up?
It honestly just throws itself at me.
The entitlement oozes from this story. I will start with this. You're in your 30s. You're living at home. That is not as uncommon a story as you think it is. There are a lot of people right now, especially with the way the economy is working, that had to move back home with their parents. I give no one shame for that. In fact, if you have a family that can do that for you, appreciate it. Understand that not everyone gets those opportunities. So obviously make it as beneficial to everyone living there as you can. So that way it doesn't feel like someone's being taken advantage of. It sounds like, unfortunately, OP's definitely done that here. He has 4 children. He's been living with his parents on and off throughout this entire period.
But full-time, 25 to 33 as an adult.
I hope that at least you're a good father to your kids. That's all I'll say about that part of this. I can understand when you're talking about trying to get yourself together mentally, but it sounds like you haven't been doing anything for a long time and not pay rent. I think that's what he says, is there's no payment here at all. He helps every once in a while with something.
Let me go ahead and actually expand on that, because Redditors, of course, called him out on not at least contributing to bills. Our OP says in response, I am helping them. Anything they need as far as food, running to the grocery store, going into my mom's room to check on her while she's coughing, bringing her grandchildren over, cooking for both my parents, cleaning up behind myself, feeding the dogs, taking them on walks, cutting the yard once a month, keeping my room clean, taking care of my hygiene, doing my laundry, doing theirs if they need me to. I mean, that's quite a lot. I understand that I need to leave, but I can't right now. I have to do what's best for me, and I'm doing this for my children.
Are the children living at the home?
It doesn't seem like it.
Okay. Maybe he's doing it because he can live closer to them, and maybe that's why he's able to look at it through that. But if you really wanted to do what was best for your children, you would start progressing in your life as well. Now, I think you have a really weird way of going about that, because he says his parents give him money to move out, to start on that next leg, but he uses it to gamble, because that's essentially what lottery tickets are. It's just gambling.
Where the house always wins. But he might double, triple, from hundreds to thousands.
Or you could have invested that money into yourself and your future instead of giving it back to the state. Maybe we are talking about some mental health that he has to work through. He's asking if he's the a-hole for not moving out yet.
Correct.
Yes, OP, you are an a-hole. And again, your entitlement is $9,000. Now, I appreciate where he's saying, hey, I'm doing all these other chores, I'm cleaning up around the house, but buddy, if you're not moving forward in life and your one solution to it is to clean up around the house and do things your parents otherwise would have done for themselves, it sounds like they need you to contribute in a financial sense, and you're not willing to do that. Now, I do understand it is hard for some people to get gainful employment. I don't know if that's your situation. Again, there's not enough in here that says that he should or can be working and he just doesn't, or if there is something else going on that prevents him from working. I think the thing that bothered me the most about this OP is he goes, it's my house just as much as it is theirs. No, it is not. That house belongs to your parents. What else do you feel entitled to?
Well, Reddit's consensus is that our OP is definitely the a-hole.
Oh, they probably dragged him.
Oh, they did. Yes, they did. In fact, let me go ahead and give just the basic gist of it. If you're not contributing financially to at least pay bills, GTFO. Now for me, I have to break this down, because entitled and privileged for me is just the start of all of this. It is quite narcissistic. The only thing that I hear is I and me throughout all of it. Not what the parents have done to help him or what he's done to try and give back. It is, I am helping them. Anything they need as far as food. When my mom is coughing in the other room, I go over to find out what's wrong. Because as a good person, I don't do that normally. Other points that I bring forward here is keeping my room clean, taking care of my hygiene, doing my laundry. And I mean, I'll do theirs if they need me to. It's quite a lot. OP, you're talking about being
an adult,
a human being that actually has some decency. And it sounds like you only have some decency because there are rules inside of your parents' house while you're there, which is keep your room clean. That's the basic minimum that you teach children. I don't know anything that they're going through. What I do hear is a bunch of excuses and how they frivolously used money the wrong way that they shouldn't have. This irritates me to a new end. I understand and have heard it where adults have fallen on hard times and have to move back in with their parents. And sometimes the headbutting is extreme when it comes to two different ways of living and families trying to blend until they're able to get their feet under them. And I have come across many stories where parents refuse to actually assist when it comes to seeing their children struggling. All of that is not this situation for me. And I think the only thing that I can truly say, there's 1,000 reasons why you can't do something. You only need one really good one to actually get up and do it. If you're embarrassed to flip burgers,
That actually did put a sour taste in my mouth.
I can tell you how difficult it is to struggle and have to do jobs that are, at least how people treat you, embarrassing. But when you know that something needs to get done, you get it done. And for some, it might be easy to do that. And for others, it might be difficult. But the fact that our OP ladens his entire post and even his comments with excuses, and I'm probably hitting this really hard, but
The thing is, I hope that for him, he got to read these comments and maybe it's made some sense. Because at some point, you do have to be responsible for what you've chosen to do with your life. He's got 4 kids. He's living at home. He's not contributing outside of himself. Because you are correct when you laid it out. Those things that he was doing are bare minimum human tasks that we all have to do every day. I hope he's seen the comments and maybe he can make some strides going forward. Stop hedging your bets on gambling.
agreed. Well, I think I've said my point quite enough. So why don't we go ahead and head into this next story and see what you think about names again. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife I don't believe her when she says she'd be okay with us calling our daughter by different names? My 30 male wife, 29 female, is pregnant with our first child, our daughter. She's just about a month away from giving birth, and we do not have a name picked out yet. At one point, we had 2 potential names on the list, but my wife told me she really didn't want to give either name to our daughter, so that was gone. Our issue comes from a difference in likes and dislikes in names. My wife likes very common, very classic names, and she likes to go a touch old-fashioned too. Her 3 favorite girls' names are Elizabeth, Esther, and Hannah. She also strongly loves the names Emily, Beatrice, Constance, Patricia, Catherine, and Geraldine. But there are many names in the same sphere she likes. My taste is a bit more mixed, but I like more uncommon names and names that aren't super used or classic, but I have some classics I like. Names I adore are Indigo/Indy, Lyric, Elodie, Lyra, Dove, Sunny, Scout, and Kalia. We strongly dislike the names the other strongly likes/loves. We had the name Brioni and the name Melody on our list for a while, but my wife decided neither were names she could tolerate our daughter having, so we went back to square one. I feel like she refuses to try and find names closer to what I like, whereas the ones I suggest closer to her, like Chloe and Alana, are names she doesn't feel totally work with her taste. She said at one point she should get more of a say as the person carrying our daughter and giving birth to her, but that was dropped soon after. However, my wife has decided the fairest compromise is one picks the first and the other the middle name, and we each call her by the name we picked. So say we end up with Elizabeth Indy. She'd call her Elizabeth or a nickname from said name, and I'd call her Indy. The thing is, I'm not opposed to this entirely, but I give it a month after our daughter is born before my wife is annoyed that I don't call our daughter by her first name. And I know when she talks about the compromise, she means for her choices to go in the first name spot and mine in the middle. I also know that annoyance will only grow if friends and family choose to call her Indy, and this is just an example instead of Elizabeth. But since both would be used a lot, it could happen, and I know her 2 younger sisters would likely lean more in my taste and would prefer something like Indy to Elizabeth to call their niece. So I don't think the compromise would work for long. I told my wife this, and she told me she's an adult and she would be fine. She said I have no reason to doubt her. I told her I know how much she hates not getting her way on certain things, and this is a big thing for her. She told me she'd be okay with me calling our daughter a different name. Even as she said it, she looked annoyed and like she was forcing it. I told her I didn't believe her. My wife said it's unfair not to because she knows herself better than I do. I suggested we trial it out before our daughter comes, and she was pissed about that too. Am I the a-hole?
So it looks like we have two parents that are pinning the unborn child against everyone else, in the sense that
If the child likes one name more, then they like daddy better than mommy, or the other way around. Yeah, I can see that.
it goes beyond them as well. He says that the sisters are going to pick the name he picks to call their daughter. I think it's Indy. And it's going to make his wife upset that no one else is using the name she picked. I think instead of going about it like this, you both probably should have continued to have conversations about what name you actually want your daughter to have. I don't know if it should be used as the weapon that you both are trying to create here. Your child hasn't even been born yet, and you're already starting this war that doesn't need to happen. Talk about it. Consider the name. Meet in the middle. Have compromise. Learn how to communicate. It's important. Is this their first child?
Yes.
Okay. So, they're starting up their next phase of life. Don't have it get started on that foot. You can come to a compromise. It'll take some time. It'll take a lot of work. It sounds like you both are very stubborn in what you want. So everyone sucks here.
The consensus on Reddit is everyone sucks. In fact, they argued the same lines as you, Damas. They said, please, open your eyes, OP. This child is not some animal that doesn't have a voice in mind. You're talking about picking this name, and it already sounds like a territorial game where the child's going to have to pick between the parents, and that's cruel.
Or that one of them was going to have a little more ownership.
Exactly. I find this very funny because there was actually a portion of the Redditors that came forward and said, OP, how very interesting that a lot of the names that you picked appear to be from My Little Ponies.
Well, I don't partake in any of that, so ooh. Detectives.
I found it funny because when I was a child, I watched My Little Pony, but I cannot stand the thought that there is someone out there that's trying to name their child from this show and then trying to spin this argument as if their partner is not compromising with them.
Did he have anything to say when he was called out on that?
He took down his post.
Oh, okay. I mean, for me, even if the names did come from a show, they're just names at the end of the day. If you like the name and enjoy it, that should be what it's about.
Well, all I can say is good luck on all of this compromise. Because if one side doesn't want to understand the other side, and it seems like there's a lot of back and forth, this is going to be an interesting dilemma that they're going to put each other in.
It won't happen overnight, but you have to keep at it.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about another house issue. Am I the a-hole for not willing my house to my girlfriend after she put her house up for sale and is moving in with me? I, male 53, was married for 20 years, and my wife passed away 4 years ago. We had no children, so many years ago, we both did our wills. In our wills, we gave each other everything, and if we both died, then everything would go to my wife's nieces and nephews. I have no living relatives. One of the reasons I did this was because my wife's parents had some money, and my wife inherited several $1 million from them. One of the things we did with her inheritance was we bought our dream house. It's a big house, about 4,500 square feet, and has about 1,500 square feet garage out in the country. About a year ago, I met Samantha, female, 55. She has her own house, but she would always come over to my house and spend the night. We got to talking, and I said she could move in with me. Samantha has a daughter who is 25 and asked if she could move in too. My basement is pretty big with a small kitchen and a few extra bedrooms, etc., so I didn't mind. Samantha is in the process of selling her house, and she asked me if I would put in my will that she would get my house if I died. I told her no. That was from my in-laws' money, and that should go all to my nieces and nephews as it says in my will. Samantha argues that if I die and she has no house, she will have no place to live. I told her, yeah, you got the money from the sale of your house, Plus, you won't have a mortgage payment. So take that money and put it in the money market account. I was pretty put off by this conversation because, from my point of view, Samantha would have zero expenses, and she could put all of her money into savings minus whatever she wants to buy herself. Not like she doesn't have a job. We got heated over this conversation, and Samantha said that I was trying to control her with money. When she said that, I told her that maybe this relationship wasn't such a good idea. So, am I the a-hole?
Samantha is very interesting. They've not been together for terribly long, I think.
Just a little over a year.
And she's posing a question onto someone else's house.
Correct.
They're not married.
They are not.
Why would that have come up to begin with this early on? I'm kind of shocked that she's willing to go ahead and fast track this. It would bring a lot of alarm bells up for me. That's your home. You're right. Your wife inherited money that you guys used to buy your dream home. And in your will, that's going to your, or her would be nieces and nephews. The fact that she's not honoring that or wanting to push past those boundaries you set in is scary to me. I understand her going, well, hey, I'm not going to have a home, but he outlines it very clearly. He's not taking any of that money from the sale of her home. He's, in fact, letting her live there. It sounds rent-free. She doesn't have any expenses going on.
Correct.
And she has a job. It's quite the opposite. She's saying you're trying to manipulate me with money. With what? He's not taking a penny from you. In fact, you're only gaining from this situation, but now you want more. It's odd. I would say you're probably better off finding someone that can respect your boundaries. You're seeing here where she's unwilling to be logical and have compromise. He says no. You're allowed to ask that question, though, but he tells you no. You understand, though. I'm certain he's told her why it's a no, but for you to not see that, to make sure you secure, in the kids' words, the bag, understanding and loving each other is important, and it sounds like she's not willing to give that back to you. So you're right in where you're standing and having to reevaluate the relationship going forward. I would as well. So OP, you're not the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. In fact, many Redditors say that OP should talk to his girlfriend, convince her not to sell that house. Anything could happen with the relationship, and they've only been dating for a year. Instead, she should be using that as a rental property, or even let her daughter live in that house instead. But by no means should it be where she should give up her property, when you never know how a relationship might swing. And if this is starting to create shaky foundations for them,
well, it could also be a way to maneuver her way in. Go, by the way, I went into this relationship full. I sold my home to live with you. You owe me these things that I'm demanding of you.
I can see that and have witnessed certain couples acting like this with their partners. If anything, never feel strong-armed, especially when you've made certain promises and it's set in stone, technically in our OP's will. Don't allow someone to shake your foundation. Point them to a better direction. I don't think that our OP's girlfriend should sell the house. That should be an investment. And if anything should ever happen, a fallback plan on. It should never be where someone goes to 100 and then you feel forced to also go to 100 when that's not what you're comfortable with.
There are other people out in the world. You're in your 50s, OP, take your time.
I do say OP's values are very stand up. He doesn't have to honor what his late wife put in, but he still is, and that's pretty stand up of an individual.
That's called love.
That is. Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about waiting for any kind of relationship till you're in your 30s. Am I the a-hole for telling my daughter to wait until 29? My 56 male daughter, 19 female, is a bright young woman who's recently completed her first year at university and is making her mom and dad proud every day the more she grows. Redundant to say, our biggest wish for our daughter is to succeed, be happy, and leave life with as few mental headaches as she can. That said, she and I recently had a small spat over something rather stupid. We were debating a topic. I mistook her passion about it as having an undisclosed boyfriend from the impacted community we were discussing. Said boyfriend did not exist, and all frustrations and misunderstandings blew over. But it did bring up the talk of dating. It was a late Sunday morning with her mom and I. We asked if she's dating anyone. No. And though we still haven't come around to the idea of her dating, we did drop a few half-joking, "who said you're allowed to date?" ribs in there. It was a casual conversation, and I gave my honest advice and opinion. This is how I see it. Get your life together first. Figure out who you are. Get situated in your career. Travel. Make some money. Enjoy your life. Then, after you built your foundation around 29 or so, then start dating. Because then you will be much more mentally equipped to handle it, and it will be enjoyable that way. I said it gently. I recommended it, not demanded it. Her mom agrees. My daughter protested a bit at first, got sour-faced, and not too long after, made an excuse to leave the room. It's okay, she's 19, but I'm 56 and I'm still learning parenting ropes. Was the advice harsh, mean, forceful in any way? Am I the a-hole? Now, before you go ahead and say anything, Damas, let me go ahead and read some comments from our OP so you can gauge their viewpoint and character a little better. Many Redditors asked what this conversation was to even start this argument between them. So in this one comment, our OP says, "No, wrong assumption. My family is actually African American. Our debate was about immigration. I empathized with immigrants needing to leave dangerous situations and move to safer countries, but emphasized the immigration process should be followed and not flouted illegally. My daughter insisted the process can be arduous, costly, and unfair. We had a good debate about it, but it was an unusual level of passion from her, and I asked if she was dating a Hispanic man, and if she was, I would not care, especially not because of his race." In another comment from OP, they say, "I had 5 sets of children from my first marriage, an admittedly rushed marriage from knocking up my ex-wife when she was 15 and I was 17. I had 5 kids before I was 27. My daughter, mentioned in the post, is from my second marriage when I met my wife and remarried in my mid-30s. And then our OP's third comment. "No, after divorcing my ex-wife, my wife and I tried to have a blended family. My wife moved them into her home for Christ's sakes. But my 2 sons promptly moved out when they were 18, letting us know the day of, and dropped out of college. It was a disrespectful and shocking move, so we are currently not in contact. My older daughter stayed behind in the state we moved from. I've heard she has recently married her high school boyfriend. My last 2 daughters, we had to evict out of our home on 2 separate occasions for certain incidences. I was a young father. I'm sure I made my fair share of mistakes with my first 5 kids, perhaps the biggest of which is marrying their mother and trying to make that horrid relationship work. But I've also seen the way my kids have thrown their lives away, often in pursuit of sexual relationships. I want to improve as a father, and I am recommending otherwise for my last 2 children with my wife."
Okay, so it does fill out his values, certainly. We can start with the fact that if it's not his way, it's no way. I've heard several times where he's overstepping to the point where it's constricting. And when you create a household that's built off that foundation, you're going to have people that when they do turn 18, lash out in ways that they might normally not have, but because they need to grab control of their lives because they've never had it, they'll go to the degrees that they have, which is the second you had 2 sons that hit 18, they left your home and dropped out of college. That's pretty extreme to me. And you have other situations where you won't go into detail about, which I'm guessing is there's a reason for that.
The older daughter, apparently all he's heard is that she married her high school boyfriend, but apparently was not invited.
When most of your children are estranged from you, a lot of the time, that is a you problem. But every single situation, he's painted them to be the recluse. I think your type of pressure in parenting has created the family that you now have, where you think it's acceptable to make a joke to a 19-year-old after a debate. It's amazing to have a debate with your kids, especially if it's one of those where you're both opening each other up to a different way of looking. At least in that way, you're teaching your kids to learn how to at least respect a different viewpoint. But you have to give them that back as well. It doesn't sound like that's what you do. I understand being a parent and wanting to learn from the mistakes, but it sounds like you haven't done that for 5 kids. And I think so this will be 7, correct?
Correct.
I'm shocked you haven't learned the lesson yet. You sound like a helicopter parent to a different degree. Your 19-year-old is going to do exactly what your other kids have done. You turned a debate that should have been about what you said was immigration, and at the very end of it, you accused her of believing what she believed in because she was dating someone. How underhanded a way of going about a conversation. You basically took everything she had and believed and dwindled it down to a relationship that you deemed she couldn't have. And then we're only okay with it because then you realize once you questioned her that she didn't have one. There's a lot of boundary overstepping here. It sounds like you've never taught your kids how to be responsible adults if you're so scared that they're going to ruin their lives the same way you believed you did. If you instill the right values in your kids, you shouldn't have to helicopter parent that way. But understand, as a parent, that your child is their own person. They're going to make the mistakes. You just have to be there when they ask for help. So be careful. The type of pressure you're pushing onto your kid will end that relationship no differently than the first 5 kids. Sometimes we are the problem, and you have to identify that. So OP, you are the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP is the a-hole. In fact, there were some Redditors coming forward saying, you're putting a stipulation on how old your child should be when they date. Do you not realize that kids especially, learn through their experiences and making mistakes, and you're telling them not to do it until they're in their 30s? So what? So that they can get into a relationship that they don't understand is a toxic one? Additionally, there were other Redditors coming forward, and I have to say I side with this one. When you have those individuals that playfully joke that someone shouldn't do something.
That's manipulative.
That is to add unsolicited advice, another big no-no.
Well, he goes, we didn't tell her not to. Yes, you did.
I think that I find it funny that, just as you said, Timstradamus, which is one of the reasons why I even read the comments so that you can gauge how OP is as a person, the fact that they would have a debate and then he would undermine the entire debate by saying, wait, is it because you're dating said someone of that race?
It basically creates a situation where nothing that came out of his daughter's mouth was worth of any value outside of because you want to get with someone.
OP apparently didn't appreciate AITA's verdict, and so they went to other forums to pose the same thing. And other Redditors came forward on those same threads and said, you already got your consensus somewhere else. Stop trying to find some form of support group when you know you're wrong. I think for me, I label these one of the ask-holes. They ask for advice, but then they don't like the answers that they get.
You got to be willing to take accountability and grow.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about dating, modern age dating. Am I the a-hole for leaving a girl when she tells me how many side guys she has? So this happened an hour ago. Went on a second date with a girl I met through Tinder. Date went well and got to her place to watch a movie, Spirited Away. It was nice and we began to make out, but her phone kept ringing the whole time. So I asked her, is that a friend of yours who's worried or something? She says, no, it's one of my friends with benefits. So I ask her, how many do you have then? She says, 4. Depends on what she feels like. So I say, but we're dating, right? She says, yeah, but I thought you weren't staying over, so someone else is coming after me. I was kind of shocked. So I grabbed my jacket, wished her good luck, and told her not to text me and left. Am I crazy or what?
I'm so happy that we were well beyond that before social media and dating apps.
Me too.
How long have they been dating?
This is their second date.
Okay. So I guess I'll lean into the story like this. It sounds like our OP was thinking he was in an exclusive relationship, and you have to ask that question, especially when you start dating. Are we seeing other people while we date? Because that happens all the time. People like to keep their options open. I understand that. If that's how you like to date around, that's your prerogative. I really don't mind it. But if you're in a relationship that you think is something, you really should pop the question, are we also dating other people around? I know that might be an awkward question to ask someone on a date.
I would prefer to be clear.
You know, as long as you guys understand where you're coming from, that you're allowed to date other people while you're dating until you do make it exclusive, or if that never comes about, at least you have an understanding of what's going on. You're not the a-hole OP for wanting to go ahead and bounce out. That's not the relationship you're looking for. In my mind, that's better than you trying to hold out for something that isn't in your values. I can't blame you for that.
The consensus on Reddit is our OP's not the a-hole. There were some Redditors that say, look, I'm sex positive, but the fact that OP's date would have a rotation literally on the night of their date that's supposed to come after OP is really disrespectful and disgusting.
I don't know what her values are and their relationship status. That's why I say, hey, you really do need to ask what it is you're in.
I also agree with that. If anything, this is like some of the horror stories that I keep hearing about, like Tinder dating or any kind of like app dating. You should really definitely make it clear what you're looking for when you're dating someone. And if you haven't made that clear by the first date, you should definitely make it clear by the second one before you're making out in her home. Now, I can truly understand how blindsided our OP would be if he's thinking that someone's worried about her safety, because of course he's the second date, right? This is their second time together and he's in her home. And then he finds out she has 4 friends with benefits that she likes to go on rotation with.
You're allowed to have the life that you want, but if you're going to get into a dating situation with someone, yes, make the expectations or the parameters of which you guys are dating on known. That way, at least if you do pop into this situation, you know that that's not what you're looking for. You'll save yourself some time. You'll save that person some time. That is today. I can't be upset with either party.
At least she was honest.
Yes.
That's the one thing that I can say.
And that's where I can't get off on any of them being the a-holes.
Well, our OP does give us an update, so let me go ahead and read that now. Update. Thanks all for your views on the matter. Couldn't sleep tonight since I was still shook, but reading all your comments convinced me that I dodged a bullet. Will delete Tinder and try to meet people the old-fashioned way.
It is my best recommendation to everyone. And I know it is very difficult, but you can do it because all of us before you guys were doing it.
Lo and behold, that one.
Yeah.
Well, let's go on to our next story and see what you think about staying positive during a breakup. Am I the a-hole for remaining positive during my daughter's breakup? My daughter, we'll call her Tina, is 16 years old. Tina and I had a really good relationship when she was growing up, but for the past year or two, we seem to really get on each other's nerves. I don't think it's my behavior that's changed. I think Tina has become a bit of a jerk. Well, earlier today, Tina and I had one of our little disagreements. She had been dating this guy from her school for a few months. We'll call him Chris. He came over for dinner once or twice, and I never really liked him much. But he and Tina seemed happy, so I never said anything. However, when I picked Tina up from school today, her eyes were red and it was obvious she had been crying. I asked her what was wrong, but she wouldn't tell me. I gave her a few moments to compose herself and then I asked her again. I was really curious about what happened to her, and many people tell me that I have mastered my emotions well. So the least I can do is help others master theirs as well. We went back and forth for several more minutes before Tina finally admitted the truth. Chris had dumped her in the cafeteria in front of her friends. Tina had found this very embarrassing, but I was elated. She now had the opportunity to date someone who I believed was a better person. I began reminding Tina of all the negative things about Chris, his chronic lateness, his lack of tact, his disregard for some of my rules, and I expected Tina to forget all about him and snap herself out of it. But instead, this only seemed to upset her more. I was confused by her reaction, but I decided that I wasn't going to engage with it. I tried my best to cheer her up and only made it worse. Eventually, I just put my hand up and said, "I'm unable to help you. I guess you'll have to get over it by yourself." When we got home, she slammed the door to her bedroom shut, and I told my wife everything that happened. I expected my wife to dismiss Tina's outburst and chalk it up to teenage hormones, but instead she took Tina's side. She said that my strategy of comforting Tina was callous and that I should have acknowledged her pain. I couldn't help but laugh. Tina has no real responsibilities yet. To say that teenage puppy love is painful when it ends is over the top. I chose not to date until college, but it certainly wasn't because I was afraid of breaking up with someone. Pretty soon, my wife left the room too, and she seemed almost as steamed as Tina. I don't know what more I can do. I just have a different interpretation of what's going on. Yet my wife and daughter are making me out to be some horrible person. I considered calling my mother to ask her opinion, but I'm afraid I'll be demeaned and insulted once again. I'm just lost here. Am I the a-hole?
From one dad to another. Sometimes it's better to just listen. You said that you didn't date, so you're not coming from a place of experience during high school. He says he dated in college. Yes, Emotions run really high when you're young. For just about everybody.
Getting dumped in the cafeteria
in front of a lot of people,
friends?
that would hurt anyone. So instead of making that conversation about how much you hated her boyfriend, because see, that's what he did. He's like, all these bad things and traits about him, I hate it. I'm so happy you're not with him anymore. How would that make anyone feel good about the situation they just went through? Because what that conversation should have been about is what your daughter is feeling right now, how she's feeling. Or this is a wild one, just be quiet. Let them come to you. They've got to work through a bunch of stuff. That just hit the fan for them. Sometimes not letting our own emotions override the moment and how something would make us feel better is not how necessarily it's going to make your kid feel better. They're an entirely different person. Sure, maybe if you had started it and you knew she wasn't feeling it, because you do have to try as a parent. But if you're seeing that it's not working, that way of trying to make someone feel good, you should have stopped. Instead, you kept going, and then your wife had to point out to you later that you had zero empathy for what she had just gone through. Fine, get over it on your own. What? Why would you dig the hole deeper?
I find it funny that his wife says, why would you not have at least acknowledged her pain? And he says, I couldn't help but laugh.
Oh, I don't remember hearing that. That's bad. Everyone feels everything differently. You should have just acknowledged that within your daughter. Just because that's not a way you would have handled it or felt during that situation doesn't mean that works for her. Also, I want to mention, he says something about how he's mastered his emotions. I don't know what that means.
I don't know either.
Because is it that you don't feel them? Is that how we've gone about this?
Maybe he didn't start feeling them until he entered college.
Maybe. I think you did your daughter a disservice in that moment. You owe her an apology. Stop taking things that happen in your kid's life and weaponizing them to drive a point home about how much you didn't like the person they picked. Instead of making it about what happened to her and how she's feeling, you made it about someone she picked. So not only does she feel bad about the thing that happened, now you're dogpiling on top of her about who she picks as a boyfriend. Does that feel good?
I don't think anybody would feel good after that.
That's the reaction you received, and that's the one you deserved. OP, you're an a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. And for me, I would have to say that he's a big douche canoe here. Now, Redditors were saying that it's gross that anyone would feel happy to hear that someone else's heart is breaking. And the fact that OP laughed at his daughter's emotional pain, just because someone is younger doesn't mean that they don't experience emotional pain. It just means that they have to work through it and they don't have the experience quite like you do as an adult.
He needs to be careful, though, because next time she's going through something like this with someone in her future, she knows she can't rely on him for advice.
That's very true. Additionally, OP's reaction to remind his daughter that apparently there are more fish in the sea, rather than turn around and tell his daughter that I'm sorry that you're feeling this pain and I'm here to support you, really shows what kind of parent OP really is, which is he's a douche canoe. Here's the paddle, OP. Get going.
Hopefully you learn though, OP. That way you can be a resource for your daughter in the future.
Well, let's go to our next story and see what you think about a Happy Father's Day remark. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband Happy Father's Day today because it felt like I was doing it all alone today? This morning, I woke up early to order myself coffee so he could take our son to pick it up and surprise me. Then they went to the grocery store and thoughtfully picked out my favorite breakfast and came home. My husband made half of the breakfast and then asked me to make the other half. No problem. He acknowledged that he was asking me to do the work and still taking credit for the benefit of our kids' experience and memories. It was no problem until he went upstairs to go to the bathroom, and after 45 minutes, I walked upstairs to check on him and he was asleep in our bed. He slept the entire afternoon. Later that day, I was doing the absolute mountain of dishes, my third load of the day, that's another story, and he asked me to make a grocery list. I asked if he could please make the list because I am in the middle of doing the dishes, and further tried to coax him by using Mother's Day in a playful way. I really didn't want to drop what I was doing to look in the fridge he was already standing in front of to tell him what we needed for dinner. He knows what the ingredients are. He could easily look himself, but he insisted I help him. I was super frustrated, so I took a deep breath, washed and dried my hands, and then opened the fridge and started telling him what we need. He could sense my frustration and called me on it. I explained that I was really hoping he could make a list himself just this once because I was in the middle of doing the dishes. I explained that when I make the grocery list, I just look at what we have and write down what we don't have. And I didn't understand why he needed my help. He started talking over me to say if I had a problem making a grocery list with him, I should just have told him. I told him that I did communicate that with him. He doubled down and told me that I need to learn some patience. I smiled and said Happy Father's Day because it was the nicest thing I could think to say. That completely set him off. He went off on me, refused to get ingredients to make our dinner, bought dinner for only himself and our kids, and has been giving me the silent treatment for over an hour. He says I went too far. Am I the a-hole?
Woo! All right.
Just so that you're aware, this was on Mother's Day.
That is exactly what I was going to ask. That puts us in perspective. So basically what this all comes down to for me is ROP feels unappreciated on Mother's Day. I wonder why she was washing 3 loads of dishes, is what she said?
Correct.
Did she ever explain that for us?
No, at least not that particular incident.
Well, what else does she explain?
There's quite a bit, but first let me hear your consensus just from what you feel.
Well, it is Mother's Day. Now, don't get me wrong. You should still be handling everything as partners together. Throwing the full load onto one person is never a good way of going about business. I understand it is a special day. When Mother's Day comes up for us, we try to make sure we take some things off Voyse's plate, but in no means does that mean that Voyse has ever thrown all of it on top of me. We've also no differently on Father's Day. It's something where we find a lot of joy in balancing.
Correct.
In that moment, when they're talking about how one's looking through the refrigerator to put a grocery list together and the other one's washing dishes, I see us and I go, we would have just switched. Because there's no way I know all of the ingredients to something, but I know my wife knows all the ingredients by heart. So I'll say in that moment, let me switch you. Then I'll start getting at the dishes while you put together the list. But that's how we've always been able to find the balance. I don't think we've ever made those type of days about singularly the person. It's always been what we can enjoy together. And then don't get me wrong, we still do the gifts and we still do the, it's a Mother's Day or Father's Day stuff, but
we've never put excessive chores on each other. We've just made sure to do a little bit extra to show that we care about.
Yes, it's never turned into like a genie rub wish lamp where one person completely takes over all of it. I think she says that her husband goes upstairs after he picks up her breakfast and then he sleeps for the remainder of the afternoon.
Well, see, so this is what happened. She ordered herself the coffee, so probably Starbucks, so that the kids can bring it to her. And then proceeds, I guess, that they're supposed to make a Mother's Day breakfast for her, but only half finishes it. She has to finish the other half. She does that, washes dishes. Apparently, he says, I'm going to go to the bathroom. She waits for 45 minutes, goes upstairs and finds that he's just asleep.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of consideration right there. And that sucks, and you can definitely hear it through her writing. When you're feeling underappreciated in a relationship, that can start chipping away at you. And small things become big things later on. So that's definitely something you guys need to get working on yesterday. Get into some type of counseling, especially if you're not being heard. So with that being said, OP, you're not the a-hole. I can't blame you for having a human response to a situation. I wouldn't have gone about it in that form. But when stress levels go up for people and they're feeling like everything's thrown on top of them, those are the type of reactions that happen. When you have a partner that doesn't want to help you, obviously things are going to boil to the top. Now, his response to you in that, by going out, picking up food for everybody else and not you. I don't care if it's Mother's Day or not. That should never be acceptable to do within a relationship. You and I have never withheld anything like that.
Never.
Even if we've had arguments where we can't see eye to eye on something, there's never been that level of disrespect.
Not once, no.
I'm kind of shocked that you'd have allowed that to happen within your relationship, that's something petty that you two can bounce between each other, that I'm not going to do something for you because you've made me upset. Your husband has a lot to work on. So P, you're not the a-hole.
The consensus on Reddit was our OP's not the a-hole. Many Redditors pointed out that there seems to be a lot that they feel here that's just under the surface that maybe OP should let us in on. So let me go ahead and read to you some updates from our OP. Our OP says, edited to add, wow, I did not realize I was going to wake up to so much to read. Thank you all for your feedback. I have been enjoying my self-brewed coffee this morning and taking in your responses. I have a lot to look over and think about. I know divorce is the obvious answer. Edit 2. No, divorce isn't the obvious answer for this specific incident. Edit 3. I mean, the idea of divorce is not solely based on this one specific incident. Several people have commented thinking everyone is jumping to divorce based on this one situation. It is more complex than this one day. No, I'm not using Reddit as a poll for whether or not to leave my marriage. Today I learned how to make Reddit paragraphs. Both of our mothers are dead, unfortunately. Our children are 6 and under. It is common for parents to help and facilitate the day. 6-year-olds and toddlers can't be responsible for celebrating their parents. I didn't expect anything from him. I know it's just a Hallmark consumerism holiday. People who have commented are correct in saying that this incident is just representative of every other day, but magnified by the fact that Mother's Day was a particularly shitty day to choose to be particularly shitty. I felt like maybe I was the a-hole for making the petty comment. I am neurodivergent, and sometimes I have trouble picking up on if I did something wrong that I maybe didn't realize was wrong to say or do. I appreciate all of the anecdotes of your strength and ability to move forward after leaving an exhausting marriage. It is inspiring. Edit. Answers to your questions. Update 4. Since Sunday, I have not lifted a single finger for baby Sinclair, my internal nickname for him. Unless it directly impacts our kids, every time he requests my help or to do something for him that he can do himself, I just use my absolute sweetest voice, let him know he doesn't need my help and I believe in his ability to complete the task himself. Then I smile and walk away. The third time I did this, he said I was making him uneasy. I could not help but to laugh out loud, which made him announce that he felt more uneasy. I know it wasn't kind, but I calmly told him he is a pathetic human. I told him I'm sorry, it has to be me, but someone in his life needs to tell him to grow the fuck up. I told him I care about him and I love him, but I will not tolerate being treated with disrespect even one more day. He said I am abusive. The actual audacity. I spared the divorce conversation for safety and because I have said many times before I want to leave and financially it isn't possible right now. Side note, I tried to leave last year because he was making me feel unsafe and his behavior was erratic. I went to the emergency room in a mental breakdown and told them about the abuse, which they noted in detail on my file. They asked about any plans to escape, and I told them I had it covered and answered their questions about my plan. I had been planning for our escape for a year leading up to this. They told me they had to document the reported abuse in my file. I asked them to check my chart to make sure it is not tied to his account. They looked at it in front of me and they made sure he wasn't on my emergency contacts or attached to my chart in any way. But then guess who got an email with my chart notes detailing his abuse and my exit plan before I even got home? I had to cool things down and start over with a new plan that I kept entirely to myself. At this point, though, he knew I had saved up money to leave, so most of my savings was depleted within a couple of months. I eventually left with our kids with far less savings, and it didn't take long for me to realize I could not sustain the cost of my original bills still in my name and new bills in addition to legal assistance and the overall cost of starting over. Our leaving caused him to spiral, and he went back to therapy. Soon after, we started to dip our toes into visiting each other, mostly because I didn't want to leave our kids with him. We stuck to outdoor public activities as a family. He has always been able to wear me down and talk me out of a divorce. This ended up no differently. Even though I know I am not an anomaly, I felt ashamed and like a complete failure for going back. Surprisingly, he never actually changed. End of side note. Anyway, back to present day. I began to gray rock, to throw off his cycle of attempting to rope me back into the argument from the other day. I have calmly listened to him gush over his love of our family and how much he loves and appreciates me and thinks I am an amazing mom. He says he loves me, but all I hear in my head is his voice screaming, "Fucking bitch, at me. It all sounds so obviously disingenuous. I told him his words mean literally nothing while his behavior is the same. It's like saying waffles have legs. It sounds unbelievable, and if I don't see it with my own eyes, I'm not believing it. I told him regardless of if in the end we stay together or not, we need to go back to therapy as a duo and separately. I told him he needs to take steps today to move forward with therapy and treating his mental health appropriately. He agreed, but no evidence of walking waffles yet. I am surprised at my ability to completely refuse to do anything he can do himself. I'm more surprised that he's actually doing the tasks himself. I have tried this before, and he ultimately bullies me into doing the task. Not this time. He keeps complaining about his results in ways that are so juvenile and manipulative, always leaving the impression that if I had just done it for him, it would have been done correctly. I just smile and tell him he did a good job with the task and tell him that it sounds like he needs more practice and eventually it will become second nature. I am feeling his attempts to make me miserable, but it is rolling right off of me, at least for now. I cannot express enough how much I appreciate the support and validation here. I appreciate married people who have shared what their day was like on Sunday and every day as a healthy couple. For those of you who have asked why I am taking to the internet with this in the first place, I have been isolated from my circle for so long. My relationships no longer exist. I have limited family, period, and no family nearby. My mom is dead. My dad sucks. My siblings mostly suck. I have no friends. I work virtually and don't have friendships with my coworkers because we rarely socialize and have opportunities to bond. I don't have opportunities to interact with adults very often. Isn't that the beauty of the internet? Despite my logical brain, years of gaslighting along with my neurodivergence has made it sometimes feel impossible to trust my own judgment. If you are offended by me posting this and have taken the time to voice your disgust of me and my post, I just want to let you know I have processed your complaints and directed them to the correct department. Thank you for your feedback.
Oh, wow. This one escalated. Obviously, you could tell that there was problems from the original post, but she goes into great detail about how bad this actually is. And I'm very sorry for our OP because it sounds like she feels very stuck. She doesn't have family. She doesn't have friends. No one to really rely on going through a divorce.
When she did go to the hospital because she felt like she was having a mental break, in fact, they alluded to her abuser, what was going on. By the way, in her comments section, she actually put down that there's this thing called My Chart, and I guess if you have family tied to it, it lets other family members know that's tied to that account of what's going on.
Yeah.
And she thought that they were disconnected, and they were not.
When you hear these type of stories, it really does make you cherish the relationships that you do have. I cannot imagine that level of abuse and
emotional neglect by a partner, as well as manipulation.
It's really bad.
It's sad that she could literally hear him say, "You're a wonderful mother, you're a wonderful wife," and in her head, all she hears is the echoes of him calling her a fucking bitch.
I don't believe there's respect in that relationship, because if you do love and respect someone, you're not talking to each other like that. And if all you're ever going to do is destroy each other and tear each other down when something doesn't go your way, or if you're having a bad day, you need to start reassessing how you handle life. I would hate to feel like everything is great till it's not. That type of eggshell. Bad days happen, but you can get through them healthily.
But it sounds like they haven't had very many good days.
And that might be why ROP is where she's at now. How do you know what a good day is if you've never had one?
Well, I hope ROP gets out of this awful relationship that seems to be chipping at her. And I would definitely look at trying to find some support, especially when it comes to other women who have dealt with the same experiences. Oftentimes, we can get strength from others who have experienced what we have experienced, and we're able to overcome that.
At least through this, she's been able to start in that process. Just because you feel like there's no way out doesn't mean there's no way out. Don't let yourself be defined by the situations you're in. It's very sad because you can hear where she's saying, "I can feel him eroding me on purpose." What a devastatingly sad story this is.
I just had to bring out another truth bomb when it comes to how people unfortunately experience and live their life.
All I would say is don't stoop down to his level. I understand the wanting to call him a disgusting human being and how bad he is as a partner. You're only giving that type of person ammunition. You're only fueling the flames. Keep yourself above water. You'll thank yourself later on for it, but don't stoop down to his level.
Well, let's go on to our last story of the day, and we're going to end this off on a good note. So let's go into Today I Fucked Up.
Please.
Today I fucked up by opening my apartment door with my boob out. For background, I work from home, and my fiance does not. As we are going on a trip, my fiance gave me his house key to our cat sitter, so I am the only one with a key to the apartment. My fiance gets home around the same time every day and calls me as he is finishing up work to see if I need him to grab any groceries, etc. So I can usually gauge how far away he is within a few minutes. Cut to this afternoon. In typical telework fashion, I'm wearing a double XL comfy V-neck shirt without a bra and bike shorts. My fiance calls me and lets me know he is on his way home. 5 minutes later, I hear a knock on the apartment door, so I decide I'd be goofy and surprise him by answering the door with my bare tit out. Without thinking twice, I pull my V-neck to the side so that my boob was out, and as I was reaching for the door, I thought to myself, what are the odds that this might not actually be him? And just like that, I was standing in my doorway face to face with one of our maintenance guys whose expression went from smiling and cheery to extremely confused. I screamed. He kind of half yelled from confusion, and I quickly shut the door and apologized, trying to explain I thought he was my fiance. Poor guy just yelled he was so sorry and he would be back later. Approximately 1 minute later, my fiance arrived home. He could not stop laughing. I was laughing, but also crying. The maintenance guy came back as there was a leak in our neighbor's ceiling, and I made a point to wear a giant hoodie as to not further scar him. Turns out, not only is he our maintenance guy, but also our upstairs neighbor. The too long don't read. I jokingly answered the door with my boob out, thinking it was my fiance. Turns out it was the maintenance guy, who also happens to be my neighbor.
Well, she thought she was doing something fun and spontaneous with her fiance. Yep.
Surprise, hon. Oh, no.
Yeah. I guess next time you should definitely look through your, because they said it's an apartment, so they probably have either a window situation or look right through the peephole. Yeah, you'll know for next time. It's funny though. She's like, I had in that split moment a thought crossed my head that maybe, what if this isn't my fiance? Maybe you're into some other stuff that you don't know about.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's allowed their thing, but
I think it would have been funnier had the fiance knocked and she would have had the other boob out, just to like even the balance of exposure.
Now they're both gotten seen today.
It was funny because some people say that would have restored the balance in the force. Always two there are, no more, no less.
Correct you are. Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
That actually did restore the balance.
Good. I'm glad. A little smile.
I still feel bad for the prior story, and I hope that OP can find herself out of that terrible situation. But yeah, that was a good way to end it off.
I agree.
Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you've seen the world, what you carry in your heart.
You sound so sad.
It's because I still feel bad, and that one's probably going to stick with me for a minute.
I can understand that. Well, if you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Mondays, and on our Patreon, we post Damas After Dark.
Yes, we post there.
We post there, we do. Talking about our Patreon, we would also love to thank all of our Teatreons for your support.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of you.
Love and appreciate you, we do.
As always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
And how are you dealing with this hot weather?
I walk around in my boxers.
Like Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Yes, I'll slide around on the cold floor. And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet.
Let's get some ice cream.
Allons-y.